Welcome to the Fatal Facts of Fentanyl. This is dedicated to raising awareness of the illicit fentanyl crisis hitting the USA. It is killing tens of thousands of people who suffer from substance abuse, disorders, and first-time users. There are no boundaries. It is straight across the board with a number of deaths without any regard to race, sex, socioeconomics, age, education, religious background, or location. It is in every community within our country. The fentanyl crisis is deadlier than ever before for various reasons. It is time to address the many issues surrounding this crisis. It is time to listen and learn from experts. It is time to hear the many stories from people who have lost their loved ones due to death by deception. Change begins with each of us as individuals and collaboration with others towards this positive transformation. The goal is to save lives and families from this travesty. Awareness and education are the key. Knowledge is power. I am your host, Lisa Carol Cood, an educator and advocate to help bring awareness to the fentanyl crisis touching every facet of our society. I am a mother who recently lost her son to fentanyl poisoning. I know firsthand the pain of grief surrounding the loss of my firstborn son. I created this podcast in hopes of channeling my heartbreak and put my energy into trying to prevent similar tragedies. I find solace and strength in working to spare other families a similar grief and any person battling this addiction. Tragedy has a way of being something powerful. This is in honor of my beautiful son's life, forever 32. Right here on Fatal Facts of Fentanyl, you will learn from experts on the front line combating the many issues surrounding fentanyl. You will hear personal stories from families and friends who have lost their loved ones and have taken their grief and pain to turn it around to make positive changes and bring awareness and education. You will also listen to people who have struggled with an opioid addiction and are still struggling and are now in active recovery. All of us share a common bond. We are all here to make a difference. We are all here to bring you the fatal facts of fentanyl. Long gone are the days when the only source of drugs was meeting a shady-looking dealer going to a shady part of town. Teens have access to digital dealers on social media with a click away. Snapchat is the most popular and has become a virtual black market for illegal drug sales targeting teens as young as 13 years old. Some kids are dying after taking one pill. The kids think they are buying a prescription Adderall, Percocet, Xanax, Oxy, only to find when it is too late, the pill is counterfeit full of deadly fentanyl. Snapchat has provided an opportunity for evil. Law enforcement struggles to prosecute cases of drug dealings on Snapchat because messages disappear and users can create multiple accounts. Dealers are posting photos of drugs and code words rather than mentioning drugs by name. This information is hard to trace. Actual transactions are arranged through the app's disappearing messages. Snapchat's mapping location feature, which is a popular feature among teens, is an ideal tool for buyers and sellers to find each other. The user location map, which users must turn on, makes it easy to arrange a meeting place or have the dealer deliver the drugs straight to the buyer's house. Fentanyl is the most dangerous illegal drug targeting our kids on social media to purposely sell fentanyl in counterfeit pills is truly the most heinous crime and death by deception. My heart breaks introducing my next guest, Amanda. She is the mother of 13-year-old Luca, her most adorable son, who was a victim of fentanyl poisoning, sold to him on Snapchat, and took his young life. Amanda, thank you for being here and sharing yours and Luca's story, all in hopes of bringing awareness and education, which is so needed in our country to help prevent further tragedies from fentanyl poisoning. Amanda, please describe your beautiful Luca to our audience.
Well, first off, thank you for having me and enabling me to share Luca's beautiful story. Luca had an absolute heart of gold. From the time he was very, very small, he began to live outside of himself and see community problems as personal issues. He advocated for the homeless in our community, insisting that we make them meals and go sit with them and share them. He was the best friend. He stood up to people being bullied, and he was always the guy that was there on a good day. He gave me a lot of really good days. He was a human that we should all aspire to try to be like. When he was just 5 years old, he threw his very first toy drive for homeless children in our community. We were getting ready to move to Hawaii, and I told him, I said, for your birthday, how about this year we have our friends and our family, bring gift cards or cash. You can buy new toys when we get to Hawaii, because as it is, we're going to have to give half of the toys that you have to little kids that don't have any. And he looks at me and he popped his little hands on his hips and he said, "Mama, why don't we get new toys for the kids that don't have any?" And that explains his heart for his entire life. He was a giver and a lover and a sharer. He believed that one person can change the world if you bring enough people to help you, if you can inspire others to live outside of themselves and help you. It doesn't take that much work. You can rally people around you to back whatever cause it is that you believe in. And so just like his first toy drive, he did that. Throughout his life, he did that. He encouraged all of our friends and families to adopt a child for his first toy drive, and it was a complete success. He just inspired everybody to want to do more and to live better for the sake of our community and the world.
He is amazing. I saw photos of him that you shared with me, and I just want to give him a big hug. His smile is just so infectious, and he just lights up. And oh my gosh, I know he was truly loved by you and everyone in your family and by the community. Thank you so much for sharing and describing him to us. As a parent, did you have any idea that drug dealers were on Snapchat?
Oh my God, no. I never thought that Snapchat was really a place for children because, everything disappears. And I always saw it as kind of a slimy platform to begin with. But, during the pandemic, we allowed Luca more access to his phone and, apps and things like that, because it was really his only means of communication with his friends, his only social life at all. So we didn't monitor him as closely as I wish we would have. But no, I had absolutely no idea that drugs were so readily available for kids. I really didn't.
Well, don't feel bad. None of us know. And majority of Americans right now don't know. We're doing this podcast, and there's so many other awareness programs in hopes of educating and bringing awareness to this harsh reality. What you harshly know now, do you think social media platforms like Snapchat should be held accountable and liable? What are they doing to combat this issue? And do they cooperate with law enforcement investigations?
Well, that's a loaded question. I would say no, no, and no. Snapchat, it was very, very difficult to get them to respond even to warrants on a homicide case. It took many months, and during this time, the dealer that had sold to my son continued using the platform to sell in our community. Now, as far as Snapchat goes, most of the customer base are minors. It markets to younger people. I never had Snapchat, for instance. Many people, parents don't. And there's a reason for that. We're not doing anything shady. People who began to see Snapchat as a great marketing tool, while, extremely sad for us, they made a killing. They made an absolute killing because there's no monitoring. There's no weights and measures. They don't even close accounts down anymore. And it's so easy to create an account that if an account was being tracked, it could easily be changed and a new one created.
You shared with me how this happened after the investigation. You were told how this happened to Luca. Can you elaborate and talk about how Luca was approached and groomed by his perpetrator?
Well, just like, most kids his age, he had decided that he wanted to experiment with marijuana. And he originally found this dealer on Snapchat to buy marijuana and nicotine cartridges from. I'm unsure of how long the perpetrator had been selling to Luca, but I know that it was over the course of at least 15, 20 times. So he started by selling him the marijuana and nicotine cartridges, and then Luca complained of mouth pain, and he was offered a Percocet. We found out later that it wasn't Percocet. As a matter of fact, there was no Percocet in Luca's system whatsoever. The tablet was pure fentanyl. So, yeah.
I know this is very difficult for you. This would be difficult for anybody as a parent or anyone in our audience who has a heart that could empathize with this story. You mentioned cartridges. Are you speaking about the large amounts of THC that they think that, the pot, the weed, the marijuana that they're buying in vapes? Is that what you're referring to as cartridges?
Yes, he was buying vape cartridges with extremely high amounts of THC. Um, and the nicotine vapes and those sort of things, which you know um, a lot of kids get a hold of that stuff, in classrooms and all over the place. It's considered to be fairly innocuous, but when you have a dealer selling these things along with other substances on Snapchat, it is very easy to create a sort of grooming dynamic. I fully believe that Ryan, um, that's the dealer's name, we can just use it. I believe that Ryan was grooming Luca to be an addict. If he were to groom him and create this addict, he would have a constant stream of money coming in. And Ryan was not a small time dealer. When they finally searched his house, approximately 5 months after Luca died, they found over 900 counterfeit Percocet pills that were pure fentanyl, and along with many other substances, cocaine, syrups, codeine, all these things. And they also found $30,000 in cash. Now, it should be noted that Ryan was only a 19-year-old man. So his demographic was everywhere between 13 and 25 from what we've been able to ascertain.
I think you just described to me Satan here on
Yeah.
earth.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything. Just my heart breaks. I mean, this sounds like it goes along as like sex trafficking, drug trafficking, all towards our children and young people, young adults in this country. Amanda, you touched upon a little bit, but can you share with us what led you, as Luca's mother and advocate, to further the investigation of Luca's death and also include the outcome of this investigation? And if you can, describe a little bit more about this perpetrator of this disturbing crime against your son and other children in this country.
Well, let's start with Ryan. Just because I need for people to understand this wasn't your typical drug dealer. And I say typical in quotation marks because people, along with stigma of drug deaths, they have a stigma of drug dealers. Now, Ryan Harrison, and I'll explain why his name is able to be used and well known now, was a 19-year-old man. He started selling to Luca when he was 18. In our local community, he he may have acted very much like Satan, but he looked like he could be the son of Barbie and Ken, a beautiful little beach boy type. When I saw him, I gasped. He, blonde hair, blue eye, amazing looking child. Okay. His father, a retired cop, his mother, a nurse. Okay. This was a young man from a really good family. And, it it's much like Luca. This can happen to anyone. It's with Snapchat and all of these things, the availability and the ease to be able to do this without quote unquote being in the wrong crowd or looking like the type. So when Luca first died, we spoke to investigators not even a week later. They had immediately taken Luca's phone and all of the required evidence to investigate it as a homicide. Because of Luca's age, they paid attention. And when I was talking to investigators, I compared it to pedophilia. Because my son was so underage and he was so taken advantage of. And there were no laws. And when he said there are no laws for this, I was taken aback, because had Ryan actually molested my son, he would already be in jail. Had he sold him alcohol and killed him, he would already be in jail. But because it was drugs, this was going to be a very long, drawn out process. And detectives made me aware that we had a very low chance of winning, of even getting this man arrested, because they didn't want to get my hopes up. And so I went into this thinking that my son's dealer could very possibly stay on the streets and be free to keep selling poison to others. And I pleaded with the investigator, and I said, we have to set case precedent. We have to make a difference here, because I don't want any more mommies to feel this way. And so throughout the investigation, I just kept reminding him of who Luca was. And I told him, I know that it's hard to investigate the murder of a 13-year-old. And I empathize with that, but I know you have children. And everybody working this case has children, and I want to protect them too. And as things, progressed, they're telling me, because I wanted to go to the media immediately. I really, really did. I didn't know that counterfeit pills were being sold in my community containing fentanyl. I did not know. I had no idea that fentanyl was used for anything other than anesthesia or Duragesic patches and end-of-life care. I had no clue. And so I wanted to make other parents aware that this was out there. And, they're telling me to not share Luca's story because it might impede the investigation. And I honored that. And then about 5 months after Luca died, 3 young men in their early 20s, right across the street from me, at the end of my driveway, they got together to have a party, and they did lines of what they thought was cocaine. All 3 young men died. Being right across the street from me, I knew them from walking my dog. And, I have a Great Dane, so everybody pays attention. They always wanted to pet him and talk to me and, all of these things. And they were really great guys, So I went on to the news article to offer my condolences, because I understood better than a lot of people how it felt to lose somebody to fentanyl poisoning. And I saw some of the most hideous comments and examples of human behavior than I've ever seen in my life. Comments like, one less druggie in the world. Well, they chose to use, they got what they deserved. Things like that. And I got a hold of detectives and I told them, I said, this is ridiculous. How are people still dying in our community? You know, I'm going public. I don't care about the case at this point. I'm going public because people need to know. And they urged me once again to not share Luca's story. And I told them, I said, that will only happen if you start creating PSAs. Our community needs to be aware of what is going on here, you know. And they did. They released the first one, and it was a cop and a nurse. It was something that no one would pay attention to. And about a week later, Dr. Laura Berman's 16-year-old son died the same way. And, you know, I just saw it as my sign. And I was like, every single one of these people is a beautiful human and somebody loves them. Like, all of their lives matter. So I started creating videos, just simple videos on YouTube, showing faces, just rudimentary slideshows of face after face after face, because I had shared Luca's story in my private grief groups. And when I did that, parents were just chiming in. It was like the Me Too movement for fentanyl. Parents just kept posting their beautiful babies, you know. And I say babies, they might have been 16, 18, or 32. It does not matter. They're still somebody's baby. And so I created these slideshows, you know, to show the impact of fentanyl poisoning. Then as the case progressed, you know, I kept doing that. I've made multiple videos now. As the case progressed, I started getting more and more hope from, you know, the detectives and all of that on my case. And see, they had reached out. They didn't have all the resources here that they needed to be able to investigate this. It was the first time in Shasta County, you know, in California, that a fentanyl poisoning had been investigated as a homicide from day one. So they called on the Department of Homeland Security, SINTEF, you know, multiple agencies, and created a task force. Now with procedure, the cool thing about procedure, it's much like case precedent. So they changed procedures in Northern California. And by doing that, they don't take that back. There were funds allocated specifically to fight fentanyl. So now in Northern California, thanks to a beautiful 13-year-old face, all fentanyl poisonings will be investigated as murder from day one. Phones collected, evidence collected, and dealers now are facing murder one charges. I am happy to say that Ryan Harrison was arrested on June 7th for first-degree murder and is being held in my local jail on $1 million bail. When we were getting close to the end of the investigation, and the main detective told me that he would be taking it to the DA, I wrote a very strongly worded letter encouraging the state of California to be on the right side of this, telling them that no matter what happened, I would be going to the media with Luca's story to help save lives, and that they didn't want to be my enemy in this. And they apparently chose the right side.
They didn't know who they were messing with, did they?
No.
You don't mess with a mama bear. You do not mess with a mama bear. I am so damn proud of you. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's I had a lot of very strange and assorted background that made me a very formidable ally or enemy in this. And the state of California chose to have me as an ally, and I'm very, very proud of the way the investigation went. I'm proud of the results thus far. Ryan has been charged with murder, and now we're just going for a conviction. And when that happens, we will set case precedent that will help protect people all over the country. I hope more than anything that it makes dealers second guess their choices to sell fentanyl, because there will be very, very real consequences. And I hope that people will start to see it as murder versus a druggy, quote unquote, druggie's choice. My son may have only used this one tablet one time, but we all know somebody who has used something at some point. And fentanyl changes the game, because you don't get a chance for recovery from that. So I really hope that, like I said, Luca's beautiful 13-year-old face can wake people up to the reality of fentanyl and the difference between the choice to take a substance and the choice of being deceitfully led to take something completely different.
I totally agree with you on all of that, what you just stated. Luca's birth date is coming up. And I want you to tell the audience what you, as his loving mom, is planning on doing to celebrate Luca's life. Go ahead.
Well, I mentioned his toy drive when he was 5 and his beautiful, beautiful heart. This birthday would have been his 15th. So it is the 10th celebration of his first toy drive. I am calling it the Decennium Giving Circle. And I am going to find a venue and get some amazing bands and have food trucks and all of the things. And we are going to support our local mission and Women's Refuge to provide toys and clothing for needy children in our community. I will also be taking donations so I can get fentanyl awareness pamphlets made, and I am going to be buying copious amounts of Narcan to pass out in our communities.
Very good. While you mentioned Narcan, can you explain to our audience, is Narcan, is that to save lives or is that to treat addiction? I think people misconstrue what Narcan is. Go ahead.
Well, there's no way Narcan can prevent addiction. Narcan is absolutely to save lives. It is a first aid kit. For anyone that wants to try any substance, I highly suggest having Narcan because it can be the difference between waking up the next day or not. It is an emergency solution to a horrible epidemic.
You actually answered that correctly. I wanted you to explain that to our audience because there's so many misconceptions out here about everything, as you well know, and we're here to educate. So, what you just explained, what you're going to have, the event. I know you have a GoFundMe page, and I'm going to link that under the description of this podcast. And I hope that everybody finds in their hearts to give to this wonderful cause that Amanda is doing in honor and love of her son, Luca. Currently, Luca's story is so important. He broke the stigma. Stigma is the enemy in our society in combating this fentanyl crisis plaguing our country. People need to learn how to empathize. Luca's life counts, and his mother is determined to make his death count too. She wants to share with the world and have an impact. Amanda lives through Luca's heart. She wants to break hearts open, and she is governed by love and empathy and wants to help teach people through Luca's example and her example to have true compassion. She feels that by telling our stories of grief and being vulnerable, we have the ability to make people feel empathy. We have the ability to make our loss count. There is so much power to make a huge impact in the world when we work from a place of love. Amanda, keep sharing and keep shining Luca's and yours light. Luca's story is going to save lives. Thank you so much for sharing him with us. My deepest, heartfelt empathy for you.
Thank you.
To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe to this weekly podcast. Visit our website, which is linked below in the description. On the website, click on the social media icons and feel free to share this podcast with others. And also, please leave your reviews and ask questions that you would like for me to ask our guest for our next episode, dealing with the fatal facts of fentanyl. Enjoy your week. Many blessings.